Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, which is entitled Mastering Intranet Essentials, Your Guide to Seamless Communication and Collaboration, presented by Elantis Solutions. Elantis helps you achieve your business objectives using Microsoft technologies. So whether you're looking to increase your competitive advantage through communication and collaboration, effective productivity, anything within the Microsoft suite, we are here to guide you. Before we get started, I just want to mention a few housekeeping items. So first of all, this session is being recorded, and we will provide a copy of the recording to all of the attendees afterwards for your future reference. There's a bit of time to answer questions in this webinar, so please feel free to put your questions in the chat or use the Q&A functionality within Teams, and we'll get to as many of those as possible in this presentation. If we're not able to answer your question right away today, we will be happy to follow up with you and help you out outside of the webinar as well. There's also going to be a few polls throughout the webinar, and we would love to see your answers and get your engagement and interaction. There should be one popping up for you in a few moments here, and please let us know your thoughts so we can understand what's important to you. Okay, let's get started. So today's session, we're going to be talking about best practices for developing and managing your intranet. We're going to share tips for creating an intuitive navigation and site structure, what content you'll want to include in your intranet, and how to overcome common challenges. And at the end of today's presentation, we also have a few tidbits about how AI can play into your intranet approach, so you'll want to stick around for that as well. To discuss these topics, I have with me two actually of Elantis' Microsoft experts. First off, we have Josh Rowe. Josh has been with Elantis for over 3 years, and throughout that time, he's implemented intranets for clients in public and private sector across lots of different industries. Some of these have been implementing an intranet from scratch. Other clients have had a good level of maturity when it came to intranets, but they wanted to move to a new platform or they were looking for optimization. I also have with us today Jennifer Piercy. Jennifer has over 15 years experience working in the Microsoft platform, including intranets, of course, as well as information architecture and records management. She's got a wide variety of experience in content management, collaboration projects, so we have a great range of experience and expertise and some really good tips to share today. So thank you both for joining us in today's presentation of Mastering Intranet Essentials, your guide to communication and collaboration. So let's start off with maybe kind of the basics. So what is an intranet? I mean, isn't that just where all company information goes?
Well, not exactly, but I have to admit that is what I initially thought when I started my IT career. Essentially, if you think of an organization as fundamentally people who communicate and collaborate, so your intranet is actually going to focus on the communication aspect, where users are exchanging information, messaging, things like that. Whereas collaboration is going to focus on actively working on documentation. So things like solving issues, challenges together, which should actually be done outside of your intranet in most cases. I have to stress in most cases. This is basically because users can get confused on where to store their documents, whether that be collaborative documents or documents that the whole organization should be able to see. But also mixing the two can be difficult for users who are actually searching for documents themselves. So searching for different types of documents, ones that are meant to be used for internal use, also ones that you're sharing with vendors and things like that. So the reason that an intranet is extremely important is it's fundamentally a hub for documents and also announcements, those communication aspects. Members in your organization should see this as the primary form for communication, whether that be the CEO of the organization communicating the organization's successes, maybe a building's power outage or a stat holiday coming up. So this should be the place that users know where to go. And fundamentally is a place for people to be able to share information. That's the fundamental idea behind an intranet.
Great. So what are the key pieces of information or the key elements of an intranet that would make it effective?
Yeah, so obviously every intranet is going to be different, but there are some fundamental areas which are pretty consistent throughout all the intranets that we see. So one of them is navigation. So often we're going to have an intranet wide navigation, or as we would call it in SharePoint, a hub navigation, which essentially is going to cater for all areas of the intranet. It's not going to be too specific, but then you're going to have a local navigation, which in SharePoint would be called a site navigation. And that's going to provide some more specific links to different areas of, say, a certain department or a purpose or something like that. The next thing that is consistent throughout intranets is published content. So it should be only finalized documents. So documents that have gone through some sort of approval process should be in your intranet, not the other ones. So this might be, say, policies for users to be able to see and action on, or training manuals to help with their daily tasks. But we want to move away from, or we don't want to be storing things like your working documents. They need to be separate and should have probably more stricter security around them. The third thing is pages. So these are often just used to display content. They may be used to provide guidance on a particular task or something like that. Also, it can be used as another navigation element where we can link to other areas of the internet. The fourth one would be communication channels. So we've already mentioned this, but often in intranets, you're going to have a corporate news area for very formal news, maybe some team announcements, who's leaving, maybe people retiring, something like that. And then you're going to have often an informal bulletin board of some sort, which essentially all users within your organization can contribute to. And the final thing would be a directory. So this is just somewhere where we can find information about other members of the organization. It might be contact information, what department they're part of, things like that.
Right. So thinking about all these pieces and that navigation, there's obviously some different ways that an intranet can be structured. Maybe you could talk a little bit about those.
Yeah, absolutely. So the way I consider it, or the way I see it, is there's two key structures for an intranet. One of them would be a departmental structure, and the other one would be a functional structure. So a departmental structure, focuses on each department having their own location to share and distribute content for the rest of the organization. So the benefits of this one, sorry, I just got a notification. The benefits of this is each department would know or own their own location and be able to manage it. So the security can actually be separated by department. So people within certain roles, say they're a manager, they might be a site owner, so they might be an owner of their department area. And then other people in the department may only be able to contribute and upload documents or something like that. The drawbacks of this is actually it can become a little bit siloed, where each department does their own thing. Essentially, they go off and create their own pages with no sort of templates, things like that. And that can lead fundamentally to lack of consistency throughout your intranet. So as you go to each department area, they have a different way of doing things, a different way of designing their pages and things like that. And what we want to try and promote is consistency throughout our intranet. So just wanted to show you what a departmental intranet would look like. So as you can see at the top here, I've got my navigation. So this is the departmental navigation fundamentally. So we've got each department here. And then if we go into one of them, we can get our guides, our templates for marketing. If we go to HR, we can see our policies, procedures, and forms and things like that. Whereas if we move on to a functional structure, so this actually makes the actual content that you're producing and its purpose the driver for your intranet. So what that means is that if a user, say, wanted to find the policies for their intranet, so in a departmental structure, as we've already seen, you would go to the specific department and then you would find the policies. Whereas in a functional structure, you're more likely to go to a location called policies and find all of the policies for the organization. So the benefits of this is it does promote collaboration throughout your departments because they're all contributing to different areas or to the same areas of the intranet. So often that you find that content is easier to find because users don't necessarily need to know the organizational structure to find what they're looking for. And this often is more flexible and scalable because if a department is say taken away or added or something like that, you don't have to change the structure of your intranet to suit that. So I'll just show you what a functional looks like. So yeah, so we've got a functional navigation here. So this again is just promoting sort of the content itself rather than the structure. So if I go here, we've got our news, we've got a knowledge center where we can find our procedures, our policies, our guides, things like that. And then we've also got like a how do I section on the right hand side where we can, there might be frequently asked questions, things like that, where users can go and find the information they're looking for. So if I was to suggest one of the two structures, I would probably say both, which sounds a bit odd. But I would find that using a departmental structure for the back end of your intranet is actually quite useful because it's helpful with role management and your security because every single department has their own area where they're uploading their content. However, the one thing I would say is having the ability to roll up content into key areas, for example, your policies, things like that, is certainly something that you should be doing. For example, within SharePoint, you can use web parts called highlighted content, where it's going to pull in different types of content based on the metadata it's tagged with. So say you want all of your policies to roll up from every single department within your organization, you can do that. So having pages and areas within your intranet where you can do that, I would definitely advise.
Great, thank you. And we did have a question on this specific topic. I think you've covered it, but the question is there a world where it can be both institutional-wide as well as functional within a work area? So I'm not sure if you or Jennifer wanted to elaborate a little bit more on that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I would definitely say you should be doing both. So in the back end structure, when you're actually creating your intranet, I would be separating it by your departments because that's easy for it's easier to define your roles. But when you're actually creating your user interface for your users, having areas within it that are function based are going to be beneficial. But the one thing I will say is that doesn't mean make it all functional based. Definitely have that departmental area as well, because some people will think, oh, I need to find the HR policy, so therefore I go to HR. Other people will just say, oh, I want to find all of the policies, so I'm going to go to a policy section. So having elements of both is definitely going to be beneficial and help with user adoption.
Great, thank you for covering that. So we work with lots of clients who have intranets, and for whatever reason, they're just not working for them. Maybe the content is outdated, they're difficult to manage, users aren't engaged. So can you share your best tips for managing an intranet?
Yeah, absolutely. So the overarching bit of advice I would give is get your teams and departments to manage their own content and permissions. That might sound a bit crazy, but it's going to take a lot of the strain off your IT team. So if they have the tools to be able to actually manage those sorts of things, then it's going to benefit you in the long run. The one thing I will say or stress is that they need to have the proper training to be able to do that. Otherwise, and understand what they're actually doing when they're providing permissions and things like that, because otherwise your access could get out of control quite quickly. As for challenges, so a lot of the issues that I find are actually in this slide. So the first one is that current users often know where everything is, so they don't actually want to change the intranet. We find that we get quite a lot of pushback there, but the problem is that if a new person was to come into the organization, they need to be able to find things effectively as well. And 9 times out of 10, that actually isn't the case. Then the way that I would do that is by ensuring that your structure makes logical sense, whether we're going with that departmental structure, that functional structure, or a clear sort of merger of the two. But also having a navigation that isn't too cluttered, but just hits key areas, and then just leveraging that more local navigation to get your more specific links. And the last one that I wanted to mention is good search functionality. So making sure that you can search across the entire intranet, specific areas, whether that's a department or even just specific folders within your intranet. Another issue that we come across is platforms are very hard to manage. So I have recently migrated someone from or an organization from Intranet Connections. And don't get me wrong, it had some really cool features within it. But often they were built on custom code, which means that whoever built it, if they are to leave the organization, it becomes difficult for someone to pick up and maybe make edits to or add to or something like that. The person that you bring in has to know custom code. So that is difficult. The solution to that, I would say, is SharePoint. There probably are other platforms out there, but this one, granted, is less flexible in some areas, but it's intuitive enough that when you create a page, any user could create one. So that's why I was saying that people within different departments can go and create and produce content on their own because it's so intuitive, it's so easy to do. The third one I wanted to speak about was stale and unused content. So every single time we go into an intranet project, it's off. 9 times out of 10, it's mismanaged, and it's a pit of old information that no one's bothered to update, essentially. When moving to your new intranet, I would suggest you clean up all of that old data before you move, and also put governance in place to ensure that the information stays up to date. The next one is actually opposite to the previous one. So this is where no governance has been in place at all, and the creation of content is all over the place. There's no consistency, and it's difficult to find anything. Again, we should be putting governance in place around the creation of content. We should be having review cycles in place to make sure that the content is the most up to date, approval processes to make sure that content that's being published is correct. And yeah, the last one I would just say is creating templates for your pages. Often when we do SharePoint projects or intranet projects, we will create templates for different types of pages, whether that be a homepage for a department, whether that be a standard content page, something like that. We'll create those templates and push them to every single site within the intranet. So users, when they create pages, they're always using those templates. Okay. The next thing I just wanted to talk about was some tips and tricks. I would suggest that you allow your departments to be able to provide feedback on all areas of your intranet. This is going to ultimately improve the user experience and get buy-in from your users. I would also be providing some informal areas to your intranet, such as your community bulletin board. This could be for things like buying and selling stuff, events and communication. This again is going to drive users to your intranet. The third one is add some color to your intranet within reason is one thing I would say. Nobody wants to look at a dull looking page. So we would often say, or we would often build a theme or a few themes out on the branding guidelines that you would provide us to use within your intranet. The last one I would say is if you're looking for to move to a new platform, I would recommend moving your intranet before your collaboration areas. It often really helps with user adoption to the new platform. So that is definitely something I would suggest.
Great, thank you for all those helpful tips. So one of the things I wanted to focus on that you mentioned was on the analytics side. So how can an organization measure the success of their intranet?
Yeah, okay. Yeah, so often within intranet platforms, you're going to find there's some sort of analytics. Sorry, I'll just change the slide. There's some sort of analytics in place to be able to, test the footfall essentially to your site. So if I just go here, I'm just going to show you SharePoint. Sorry, just bear with me. So within SharePoint, this is within a specific site. I'm able to see the overall traffic, so whether that's unique users, site visits, average time spent by users. There's other information down the bottom, but I can scope this by 7 days, 30 days, and 90 days. And what this is going to be able to, or going to tell you, is how many people are actually accessing this area of the intranet, whether it needs to be changed, whether it needs to be merged with another area, things like that. The other thing we have is page analytics. So if I just go to my other screen. So if I just go to this page here, I've got analytics here. So this is specific to the page rather than the site. And here I can see the unique page viewers, views, average time spent again, and I can scope that to 7 days, 30 days, 90 days. And this is going to tell you again, whether this page is actually useful to users, whether they're actually going there and finding the information they need.
Great, thanks. And Jennifer, I think you've got some other tips for measuring intranet success as well.
I do. There are some other ways outside of the tooling that I have encountered for measuring success with intranets. In some ways we might achieve this is by initiating an employee satisfaction survey. That's something that can be done internally. You can also, there are search analytics in addition to what Josh had just showed you. And that's just been updated recently, I think in the last 2 weeks or so. So we are getting now enhanced search analytics. So we can find out things like, how long users are staying on for. We can do query analytics to see what users are searching on, frequency and things like that. We can test, mobile app usage, how much they're using, what percentage of increased login time. We can do things like time spent managing support calls. So you can measure reduction of support calls with regards to the intranet. You can also do metrics like employee generated content. You can measure how much that has grown in percentage, as well as you can see there's a report to identify how many users are creating content. And in addition to that, there's time spent creating content, could be has a decreased amount of percentage. So these are just a couple of ways that you can measure success with your intranet.
Great, thank you for sharing those. And I also wanted to ask about that topic that is on everybody's lips, which is AI. So how might the recent evolution of AI capabilities play into developing and managing an intranet?
This is a very exciting area, AI in general. We can now, using your own words, describe a page or a site, and Copilot can actually go ahead and create that content for you. It's pretty amazing. I just read a blog post this morning from somebody who has recently been hired at Microsoft, and his initial thoughts was that AI is being threaded into everything. So AI is coming to your intranet. It's actually here already. And how you're going to be using it, it will be how we'll be interacting with M365 will be evolving through AI usage. We can now create an interactive chatbot based on curated content within SharePoint and OneDrive using Copilot Studio. So we can basically create a language library based on content that you specify, again, within the Microsoft platform. And then you can create an interactive chatbot based on that content. It's pretty amazing. We even have an Outlook. We have this, it's coming. It may not be available yet. We have this prepare button, which is actually going to go and collect information about the upcoming meeting to give to you. So there's so many ways that we are going to be, that AI is already at our desktop, but there are considerations that you should take when you're thinking about opening or enabling AI on your tenant. And those considerations are, of course, top and foremost probably, is security and privacy. So how do I make sure that that I'm not oversharing content? That's primarily the number one concern, is oversharing of content. So when you, for example, create a chatbot based on content that you've predetermined, you want to go through that content and make sure that you're not oversharing information. So that kind of leads to my second point, data access and governance. So there's things that you're going to want to do before you enable AI, and that is to review your content for oversharing. And of course, there's always licensing costs. There's this new pay-as-you-go model. So when you use Syntax, for example, to go ahead and do a review of your content to return back sensitivity types, there's pay-as-you-go cost to that. So understanding your license requirements and the implications of those is important as well. And I talked about sensitive content and making sure that you go through your libraries to make sure that your sensitive content is excluded from the libraries, or that you only limit people who can who should have access to those libraries. And do keep in mind, though, that these large language libraries, while they're cataloging everything, Copilot is ensuring that you are only seeing what you are allowed to see. So there is the security trimming is observed throughout. And then you can monitor your activity with Purview. So you can actually monitor how users are using AI. So the kinds of questions that folks are using, how they're using it, are they using it to create content? Are they using it to, enhance their existing content and things like that? So you can monitor how folks are using it. And it's good to monitor how they're using it to ensure that you don't have any gaps in your security and your governance, as well as helping you grow and mature your AI journey. So that is a lot, and there's a lot more coming down the pipe.
Great. Yeah, it's exciting to see all these new capabilities coming out, and it'll be interesting to see how the workplace evolves based on these tools. So thank you for sharing that, Jennifer.
You bet.
One more question here. So, what would you recommend to organizations who might be just getting started with their intranet, or they're not sure where to go next in order to optimize it?
Yeah, so I would recommend engaging a consultant, mainly because of experience. So we've got experience in how to get these projects actually off the ground, and the prep work that needs to go into it before you actually start the project. Often we're going to know the platform and how to leverage it to actually suit your needs. And we have the experience with different types of intranets, whether that be a large intranet, a small intranet, a new one, or just a transformation. So another thing is we have collaborative ways of gathering requirements, the pain points of your users, but also designing the intranet itself. So things like a card sort workshop, which is going to be an interactive session that helps to build your intranet navigation. And we'll also test it through a tree test. We've got other workshops such as the landing page workshop, where we're going to be building out your page templates and also the landing page for your actual intranet, which is going to be obviously an extremely important part of that. and also your metadata workshop. So this is where we're going to be working with your users to identify the common terms that are used and actually create a taxonomy, which is going to be leveraged throughout your intranet to create some consistency. Another thing is training, which is going to be a huge part of user adoption when you actually move to your new intranet. So we would provide training for your admins, for your site owners, and your end users. But we also do something which called a SharePoint 101, which is actually for the project team specifically, which is at the start of the project. And that's going to aid us in basically giving you guys the tools and understanding of SharePoint to a basic level so we can really collaborate on those discovery and design phases of the intranet project. So that's one of the other really important things. The final one that I have is knowing how to physically migrate the content from your current platform. We've worked with various different platforms such as Drupal, Intranet Connections, things like that. And we have experience in how to actually migrate the content out of there and into a new platform, while making sure that we can do it as quickly as possible, but as well as making sure that we have everything.
Great. Thank you for sharing those. So we do have a few questions from the audience. So I'll invite both Josh and Jennifer to chime in as they see fit. The first question here is, can you talk a bit about best practices on marrying governance meets individual customization, having users or work areas that have locus control without losing that consistency and maintainability in an enterprise level complex environment? So a bit of a complex question there, but maybe you can just talk a little bit about, how you can find that balance between creating consistency in sites, but also giving users autonomy and freedom to be flexible within their own department and their own needs.
Yeah, so I would suggest you are creating a governance plan which basically has how often users are going to, or people are going to be reviewing content, and some guidance on, say, the colors that they should be using, the text fonts that they should be using, things like that, but allowing them to go and create what they feel is best for the intranet. Also, using things like templates are gonna create that consistency and that governance, making sure that they do start from certain templates, but providing plenty of templates for them to choose from. Those sorts of things are really going to help with that governance aspect.
Great, thank you. And I have another one here. So can you talk a little bit about some creative ways that you might encourage adoption and drive staff to go to the intranet?
Yeah. So I would probably be suggesting things like polls and surveys. These things don't necessarily need to be on your intranet, but it could be on aspects of your organization as a whole. One of the things I've seen in another organization is just a question of the day, just essentially a quiz question of the day where people go in and answer the question essentially. Also things like employee spotlights, possibly, where you're just highlighting the achievements of certain staff within your organization. So just making it an area where people can go and see, oh, this person achieved this week or something like that. There are just a few different ways that I'd probably suggest doing that.
Great, thanks. And we have a couple people actually asking for some examples of successful intranet implementations and what factors contributed to that success, as well as examples. I'll just read it here. Do you have any case studies or examples that you can share for shifting content stewardship or maintenance to the user or work area without bumping up against the inconsistent or stale content due to no time or lower priority? So I guess just thinking about, how can organizations be successful? Maybe Josh or Jennifer, you want to comment on some of the examples that we've seen, challenges that customers have overcome in the implementation, and how they've balanced out that governance side of things as well.
Jen, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, sure. I sure can. And I think the key brick in this story is your organizational change management, because you've got IT on one side, locking down controls, which is your governance, and then you got users who want to do things but feel like they're hitting that ceiling of functionality and capabilities. So I think I've got the nature of your question, but I do believe that center to that is organizational change management. They help facilitate the the ongoing changes to the organization, and ensuring that you've got a solid governance team that's understands the user's asks, and governance being an ongoing body of work that make ensuring that there's flexibility on functionality versus required controls. So thinking about AI in particular, folks want to get in and play with it, but you want to make sure that they're playing in a safe quote unquote playground, and that's where your governance is in play, is ensuring that they're working within controlled environments. So that, yeah, this is an ongoing, I don't want to say battle, but it is an ongoing point of contention between end users and IT/governance. So I don't think it's going to be an issue that's going to go away, but we should really embrace our internal resources of organizational change management where we can, because they really do help facilitate the change. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Jennifer.
Mhm.
And when organizations are deciding on which intranet platform might be right for them, what kind of things should they consider?
They should definitely consider their needs. They'll have document what your needs are. If you've got existing content that you need to bring in, you want to take into consideration if you have a special kinds of content, for example, like large CAD drawings or something like that. You want to make sure that whatever tool you decide is going to be able to facilitate your particular business needs, your particular um, business rules and the functionality that you're looking for. So first off, making sure that you have an understanding of what your needs are, factor in your organizational goals, strategic plans, always helps solidify and get your organizational buy-in as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, those are good considerations. And I would highlight too, maybe one of the ones that Josh mentioned earlier about, being able to maintain the platform easily ongoing. That's a big challenge we see with some of our clients. I don't know, Josh, if you wanted to elaborate more on that, or.
Yeah, absolutely. So being able to easily change your intranet without having to use things like custom code, that seems to be a real pain point for some of the organizations who have actually migrated to SharePoint since. Also, I just wanted to add to that, the ability to customize the branding for your intranet is really, really important as well. A lot of the organizations that we work with, the first thing they want to know is basically, what is it going to look like? What colors are we going to be able to use and things like that. So being able to customize that branding is definitely vital. One thing I just wanted to say is that SharePoint is actually implementing something called the Brand Center. Currently, that's just for basically governing your font styles. But in the future, or in the not too distant future, it's also going to make it even easier to be able to customize your branding than it is now. So that's just something I wanted to add to that as well.
I should add to that too, Josh, that if your tenant has the early features, so the early release features, you should be able to see this now. Otherwise, I think it will the brand center will be lit up for everybody, I believe, coming September. If you go looking for it, it's in your organizational settings section.
All right, we have one more Q&A. I think that we have time for one more question, and it does tie into this. So the question is, are there specific specifications or requirement types that a consultant would need to understand at the RFP or RFI level? So maybe I can jump in, although I'll certainly let the technical people assist, but my background happens to be in the RFP world. So, I think just taking on to what Jennifer and Josh mentioned, understanding of the key functionality that you would like to see in the intranet is really important for vendors responding to an RFP or RFI. an indication of, the amount of content, whether you'll be moving content, whether you'll be migrating content or starting fresh, is very valuable for us to understand kind of where you're coming from. Jennifer, please jump in anytime.
My compliance side of me just said, wait a minute, what about your regulations? Something else you also need to take into consideration is your business and regulatory requirements. Absolutely, you need to bring those into play too.
Yeah, that's a great recommendation. Thank you, Jennifer. And I will sneak in one more question. I know I said last one, but we have one more. How can we leverage analytics and data insights from the intranet to continuously improve performance and user experience?
Josh, do you want to take? I can take that one. Either or. So for example, if you have content that's not being accessed, you might want to update the content or put it in another area, or you can do campaigns to get the message out there, whether that's email, whether that's messages that appear on the intranet, or other ways of getting that messaging out.
Yeah, good suggestions. Absolutely. It's a good way to see if content isn't being accessed, or if it's being accessed super frequently. Maybe it's something you need to, put on the front page or make easier for users to find as well. And that's something that we do in some of those card sort workshops and tree testing that Josh.
And don't forget to take into consideration your search analytics too, because you can find out how people. That's another factor into that equation. Is you can look for certain terms that people are searching for to find your content, and if your content doesn't match up those terms, maybe you could apply some of those terms to the content so that the content appears for you.
Great suggestion. Thank you. I think that's all the time we have for today. So I want to thank everyone for joining us. Thank you, Josh and Jennifer, for answering all these questions today. If there's any outstanding questions in the chat or in the Q&A, we'll follow up with you and we can speak with you personally about your needs and address any of your questions. And on that note, we're offering all of our webinar attendees a free consultation with one of our consultants to answer any of your questions. So whether you're looking at implementing a brand new intranet, whether you're migrating to a new platform, thinking about how you can modernize, integrate, optimize in other ways through automation, we're happy to talk to you about your specific needs and discuss how you can better leverage your intranet to improve communication and collaboration. I'd also like to quickly mention our upcoming webinar, which is called Mastering Information Governance, Teaming SharePoint and Team Sprawl. That will be on June 25th live. So in that session, we will demonstrate best practices and tools that will support governance in SharePoint and Teams. And we'll put a link to that in the chat as well for the attendees, so you can get that in your calendar. As I mentioned, after this webinar, you'll get a recording of today's session, and we'll also follow up with information about how you can book that free consultation and about our upcoming events. You can also follow us on social media, subscribe to our newsletter, or visit elantis.com/events to stay up to date on technology trends and make sure you don't miss any future presentations. So thank you all for attending, and we hope you have a wonderful day.
Thank you.